Hi everyone. Today we take it as a given that there are organizations out there devoted to promoting and protecting gay rights and that are billed as a good way for BTLG folks to meet one another and to take collective action. Now I don't think this will shock you, but that hasn't always been the case. In 1950s US life, being gay was aberrant from the mainstream in society, and you could find yourself ostracized, fired, or jailed as a result of even being perceived as homosexual. Changes wrought by the massive movements of people, the sea change in the composition of the workforce, and the specter of communism during and after World War II resulted in a devastating backlash from an extremely paranoid government. These early years after the war, however, end up being catalytic to civil rights work that we think of as coming much later. For example, 2 decades before Stonewall, people had already come together to form prototypes of what would later be called gay rights groups, known then as homophile organizations. Homophile being an alternative to homosexual because of the latter's unwholesome connotations, which, interestingly enough, if you remember from our first episode, homosexual was itself conceived as a milder term in its own time. Two of the earliest and more widely known of the homophile organizations were the Mattachine Society and the Daughters of Bilitis. I've compressed a lot of the timeline here in the interest of including both organizations. That is to say, the stories of both the Daughters of Bilitis and the Mattachine Society deserve a much richer and more in-depth telling than I'll give in this video. These early post-war decades are marked by major steps forward and back through the push and pull of social norms being changed within a system designed to maintain the status quo. The story of homophile organizations are distinct yet also tied in with other civil rights movements of the era. Mattachine Society was founded in 1950 as the Mattachine Foundation by Harry Hay and a number of other leftists in Los Angeles, who used tactics they had learned through their association with the Communist Party to form a secretive group where gay men, for the most part, could congregate without fear. They socialized in private homes, held discussions with doctors and psychiatrists to dispel the stigma around identifying as homosexual, and they worked to get anti-gay laws overturned. One early action taken by Mattachines was to oppose in court the entrapment of member Dale Jennings by LA's vice cops after he was arrested in a public bathroom, purportedly for propositioning a police officer. By winning the case, the group raised their profile among other quote-unquote fellow travelers, and membership increased. More famous members included Hay and designer Rudy Gernreich, as well as Frank Kameny, who I intend to do an entirely separate episode on at a later date. As the society grew, it spun off affiliates that formed in Chicago, DC, San Francisco, and other big cities. This early period concluded in a 1953 convention at which the original leadership was pushed out and the organization's structure changed. The society survived in one way or another into the 70s. While not exclusive to men, the Mattachine Society was less concerned with the liberalities of lesbians, and for some women that meant a woman-focused organization was both necessary and desirable. Inspired in part by the society, a group of 8 lesbians, including Del Martin and Phyllis Lyon, formed the Daughters of Bilitis in San Francisco in 1955. Initially more of a social club, the Daughters also branched out into a more activist space, experiencing many of the same growing pains as had the society before them. The activities of both organizations were also along similar lines. In their early years, these organizations embodied a sort of middle-class, mostly white version of gay activism. They had strictures on how their members should dress and act, read normally, and were envisioned as a more genteel alternative to gay bars. For Daughters of Bilitis, this meant that the more working-class butch and femme scene should be avoided. Daughters of Bilitis became more radical and pointedly feminist as time went on. In the 1960s, many members wanted more direct feminist and radical action, and the latter, which was a Daughters of Bilitis affiliated magazine, was subtitled A Lesbian Review. It became harder to contain all the differing viewpoints within such a diffuse organization, and by 1970 the national leadership had disbanded, although local chapters persisted much longer after that. It's worth saying that at this time, organizing around being homosexual was a radical thing, and potentially dangerous for participants. What can look like cautiousness or even timidity today took a lot of personal bravery to pull off at the time. Homophile organizations laid out foundations for work done by later gay rights groups, and there is a palpable through line from them through Stonewall and into the current day. As always, you can follow the show on Twitter, and you can follow me on Tumblr, and you can subscribe using the handy button. There's a link to the transcript in the description below. See you next time.